This is definitely one of my favorite people to interview. Game changer, Jizzy Pearl. I feel like it's the room at the Rainbow and all those rooms we hung out with to find our friends in little back rooms and clubs.
God.
You know what I'm talking about when
Yeah.
you made it to the DJ room at the Rainbow?
All those crooks and nannies.
Yeah. It's funny because obviously we're talking about your dude, this book crushes them all, crushes everything. This is to me the one of the best rock books it's not a rock book. There's just so much. It's a life manual. It sucked my soul out and spit it back at me like some portal of existence that it just like, wow, because what we're talking about in it, you're two people. You're the kid in the Sammy Hagar shirt that can't make it to the back red room,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the arena ready rock star that owns the back room.
Well, I think well, thank you for your gushing
I
recommendation.
mean, dude, I was floored. I mean, I had to pace myself and skim some because you know when you get a great book and you don't want it to end. It's like one of those things I just don't want to end.
Yeah, I mean, it's uh it's a cool retrospective into, the before, during, and after. You know what I mean? I do talk about the Sunset Strip in some of my other books, but I kind of delve into it a little deeper in this one and sort of like you place myself on the Sunset Strip with a handful of flyers and a stapler. You know what I mean? And and how shit was back then. You know what I mean?
And how shit is. I mean, we could talk about it. This is with the women, the Platinum Club meeting now and today. These women, who is, it blew my mind. I go, the closest thing that's moved me like this is that show Californication. This is obviously more intelligent, but if that show's off the air and can't be made now. So this is what this felt like to me when they're meeting again. That meeting of those women in the valley
Yeah,
ripped my
is that
soul
heavy?
out because I have exes that I know the only reason they won't talk to me, and I spend years of my life with them, all my youth, is because they don't want the current husband to know what their employment was.
Well, or what shenanigans they were up
Yeah,
to.
and I wouldn't say it, as wouldn't you, if you wouldn't walk up to them. I think we have enough respect that if you ran into one of those girls, you wouldn't bust out with their
Yeah,
resume from
thanks for
80.
the chlamydia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'd be cool. We all grow. That's what I don't like about those women is we all grow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny story because obviously that came from an offshoot of one of my other stories called the Platinum Club in one of
Yeah,
my other books,
yeah.
where all these girls get together at the Rainbow who sleep with guys that have sold over 1 million records, hence the name Platinum. And yeah, and now they're in their late 30s and they're trophy wives. You know what I mean?
And
And
they
they're
all
driving
are. They
Mercedes.
all are. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, their past is definitely a no no.
Yeah, and I think we're the first generation from the strip to really truly see it. You know, I mean, Motley Crue, I don't know that that generation saw it the same way we saw the whole arc of it happen on the internet. You know, I mean, by the time MySpace came around, we actually got to see it happen.
Well, there's people out. I mean, not many people. The thing is not many people have weathered the '80s. You know, I mean, you and I, we're
Yeah, yeah.
still talking, and we used to hang out back then. But there's not
Yes,
many
yes.
people. So again, I bring it up, and I have this YouTube channel
Yes,
called
I'm gonna
J
put a
Pearl
link to it. I
TV.
love it. Yeah, yeah. I'll
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
link
yeah.
to it.
And I talk a little bit about it, about how I try to explain what it was like to be on the Sunset Strip, because everyone always asks, and and it's hard to describe because you have to have been there. So I try and describe it a little, but you were there, so you
But
know.
and I've read the books, and nobody puts it better than you. No blog. I love the Nothing But a Good Time book, but those guys were not on it. There's nobody that touches it. This feels like it should be TV to me. Like this is, because it could probably apply out other ways. It's such a good story. And
Well, the thing is it is a good story that the '80s, being on the Sunset Strip, being a broke dick musician, like everyone else, but being part of that community is a good story.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if someone like me who never had any money suddenly, won the Wonka golden ticket. I mean, it's a great, it's kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where I
Totally.
find out
Yes.
that I got the whole shebang.
Well, to someone like me, you did, like you probably look at, I don't know, Axel, whoever, like, I mean, I'd rather be you than Axel as far as happiness, but you know that you did it. And we looked at you guys, Columbia Records, Ron Oberman. I read about him with Bruce Springsteen's guy, and the Magic Knights of, you got signed. You checked every
Well,
box.
and that story in my new book is, it tells the story of how that actually happened, and
Yeah.
uh, how it happened in a good way. You know what I mean? It was a struggle, 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 and then boom. It wasn't like American Idol, where you know what I mean, where
Yeah. Yeah.
you win a fucking prize. It was more of you've earned it at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You put in your time in Vietnam, and you came out with alive.
Yeah, and the big prize, and I love the stories along the way of the whole band going to the Forum, because Joey's dad had the, that box. I think I ended up seeing Nirvana with Brett Bradshaw there, because Joey couldn't go one night. But I love how you divide the eras of this era, the Sunset Strip. You saw the Crew kind of era and the
Mhm.
GNR era, because to me it reminded me of when Springsteen finally down the road can talk about Dylan is the template for him. When he came out, he didn't really want to say that this is what's really opened the door. They're not that big of a age difference between the two. And you talk about Guns changing, the game changed for everybody, because you guys weren't a
Well,
Guns ripoff.
and you know it, and you know how record companies were out there looking for the next GNR, and you heard that a lot. Oh, you guys are the next GNR. You guys are going to be the next GNR. When in reality there was one GNR,
Yes.
and it was GNR, and they were great. You know what I mean? And they made that legendary record, but we all benefited from being at that right place at the right time. All, Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, and on and on and on.
Well, I
Us.
think all of us, because also one cool thing about GNR, and I know I can speak for myself, I looked at that band and go, well, that singer isn't the guy, is like myself. He's not the guy that walks in a room and a girl goes, I gotta hit that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It was like, I mean, he became it, but before the fame, he wasn't the Vince Neil, the polished
No,
California.
remember when all those, you should just see those guys at the Coconut Teaser and just hanging out.
Yeah,
Remember, I don't know if you remember this story. It's a funny story, but there was a guy pretending to be Izzy Stradlin,
I do.
and we called him the false Izzy. And he, remember, next door to the Rainbow was that apartment where all the waitresses, the whiskey
yes, yes,
waitresses,
yes, yes. Yeah.
and that's where we used to go for our parties. And there was this guy claiming to be Izzy Stradlin, and people were giving him money, and chicks were giving him drugs and banging him. And we went and saw him. It's funny because I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, I don't know Izzy well enough to know if this is real or not. And then Axel literally was at the Rainbow and walked down to that apartment and outed that fucker.
And they would do stuff like that. They were so street. You were like, I was, I don't know how many times as a kid I stood in that driveway watching him go somewhere and go like, oh my God, last night they were blasting Manuel Noriega out of his house with this guy's music. Now he's talking about going to Carol's house for an after party from the whiskey. Like, this is
Carol, yeah, yeah, yeah. I used to date a whiskey waitress myself, and so they made probably $10 a night. So we'd go the next morning to Denny's and spend it all on breakfast.
oh, I mean that time when I moved to Hollywood, you guys were all dating them. So I decided I should try to date Carol. I was 18. She was probably almost like 28. She lied to me, said she was my age. Our biggest song in Blackbird Jungle was about her, but I was like, I should do this. And she took me into a 2-year hell, initiated me, you know what I mean, into that
Wow.
Hollywood,
How
world. And
funny is that? Yeah, those were good times. I mean, those were, again, the Sunset Strip. I try and talk about it in my new book. about the community. I mean, it was a struggle as well. I mean, everybody, speaking for myself, you know, I'm living in that building and I'm surrounded by musicians and musical instruments. So every day it's a daily reminder that this isn't a hobby.
No.
We're not doing this for fun and games. We're doing this to get a record deal, and it's imprinted on you. And but there was also the good times, you know what I mean, of going to the parties and hanging out and knowing everybody and going to everyone else's gig, and you know, the good times
Yeah.
and the excitement. Oh, you hear someone got signed. Oh, you hear this band got signed. Oh, you hear this band got signed. And you're thinking, you know, maybe I'm next. Maybe I'm next.
I
And
was I was at an apartment on Clark after one of your gigs, and you and August from Johnny Crash were talking about record deals. Like, wait,
mhm.
these guys are really gonna get that red thing with the Columbia? This, oh my God, this is for real.
Those
I
guys
thought,
got a record deal before I did, and I was totally jealous. They I forget the name. They were a subsidiary of CBS that unfortunately didn't really go anywhere.
yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't big like Epic. I forget what it was called. But they were on a smaller offshoot of CBS. And I remember they had a signing party for their because they got signed, and Skid and Joey got kicked out of the party.
Well, you guys,
It
the
was
difference
why
is
I
Johnny
ought
Crash,
to.
yeah. Johnny Crash was cool, but they weren't writing about what we were living. You guys were truly writing about what we all were living. That's what was so to us as kids so huge. It's like
Well,
you
yeah, I guess you're right, because when you're writing about the place that you're playing and and the experiences around the place you're playing. It was kind of like how the Doors wrote "When the Music's Over" about the whiskey and
yeah, that's
a
what it felt
lot
like.
of.
And I had studied the Doors, and I knew the drama of Louis and Vicky, and you're
Uh,
singing about Vicky. And I remember being in the crowd. You said something in your book where you guys would work, and the No Bozo Jam really helped you work things out. I remember sitting in there, and you had a new song, One More Round, and just the bass and you and
mhm.
Kid, like I had never heard anything. The way the song stopped in the liquor store, it was insane the night you played
That
One
was,
More Round.
yeah. It basically, um, to those that don't know, I talk about it in this new book. We were kind of hit an impasse. You know, we had been passed by all the record companies in town over and over and over, and you know, you kind of run out of hope. And then the guy at the whiskey, his name was Louis, the manager. Monday nights were generally slow there, so he thought, let's do 8 or 9 bands playing their best 20 minutes on house gear. Kind of one of the first jam nights that ever,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
that's when I landed there, and it was.
took off. And
Mhm.
so we got in on the ground floor, us and a band called Daddy Ray. Remember that? Of course
I
you
do,
remember that.
I do, I do,
And
100%.
uh,
And
and we were,
Sandman would fucking
yeah, we
MC
were
it.
some of the first bands that got to play. And so what that did for us, and especially me, was I was able to play every week as opposed to every month or 6 weeks. And so it became um, easier to get into the jizzy mode. You know what I mean?
Oh
I was
yeah,
able to work out shit on stage, like just how to act, how to be. And
you're
we were
right. The
able to
continuity does help
we
you a
were able
lot.
to demo new songs every
Yeah.
every week. Like, here's a new song called Rock Queen. Here's a new song called One More Round, and just see if people dug it or not. You know, and maybe we'll change it or maybe whatever. But it was an integral part of, and you didn't have to sell tickets because, you
And
know,
for
it was a
us as little
pay to
rats
play.
that had just moved there and needed to save our dollars, we could take the RTD and go see. We became your tribe because we didn't have to pay to get in. So it was like a
Yeah.
perfect storm. Was it? Maybe it
And
was
it was yeah, it
$2.
was and it took off, and it would be packed every night. And so you didn't have to sell tickets. You didn't have to worry about the commerce part of gigging and schmoozing and stuff like that. You could really focus on songwriting and getting your act together. And it obviously helped because we got signed in December 1988 out of the whiskey. And
Yeah.
yeah, the rest was history.
Yeah, and what was also cool was for ADD type people like myself, it wasn't a long set there. It was always a tighter set. It was a shorter set there, right?
Yeah. And like I said, you could play your best 20 minutes,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was kind of like punk rock. You know what I mean? Where uh, you were able to just shoot them with a machine gun and then get off stage. And yeah, I mean it was the big a big part of why things happen for us.
And I love, yeah, and this is in the book. So I love talking about the book, anything in the book. When you guys would come out, and I remember landing from Jersey with the flags and the beer
Mhm.
can cross. It just seemed like I said, like this voodoo ceremony, which was going to take place. How did that occur with the flags and
You know,
cross? Because it seemed like you two voodoo level, something was going on, you know.
the whole beer worship thing is a little odd. I mean, we used to drink beer, but everyone did, but somehow we sort of elevated it to a religion.
Yeah.
and and that's how I guess how the Bud Cross came out. But the thing at the flag and the Bud Cross and everything else was we 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 copied other bands, how other bands came out with amazing intros. You see big bands these days, they have the kabuki,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have the warm up, that you know what I mean. But we couldn't have really afford any of that pyro or
Yeah.
explosions like the Motley Crue did. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We couldn't really afford that, so we just kind of went organic and just we wanted to kick ass at the beginning, and plus it riled us up and got us excited to do the show as well. So I guess that's sort of how that whole thing started.
And because it's funny, our band, we got better when we did an intro like you. We had a drum in the middle of the stage because it was just easier. We knew we would never have a silk screen backdrop that would be perfect. So, and it
Yeah,
worked. Kind of
yeah. I
here
mean,
we are.
it was a
Come in.
way to inject some showbiz
And
and
also
into
check your amps and go, it's better to know then if an amp isn't going to turn on than
yeah,
when the first song.
that
You know what I mean?
I've seen so many bands go crucified. They come out and then a bad $4 chord
Yeah, it's this guy. It loses that
just
spirituality of the entrance.
it's like you're in the trenches and your gun jams
Yeah,
and
yeah, you're right. That's like,
you, you're totally effed. Oh,
man.
by the way, I mean, I know people know this maybe, but jizzypearl.net is where you get the new book. And I want to talk about my new YouTube channel, JPearl
Yeah, let's
TV.
talk about it. Yeah.
And I'm, because Spotify, everyone goes, why don't you put your music on Spotify, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's kind of an ordeal. You have to hunt down the publishers and you have to get the music from them. And I thought, well, you know what, screw this. I'll just put all the music up on my YouTube channel,
That's
and
awesome.
people want to listen to my third, fourth love hate records, some of my solo records, or you know what I mean, then they can just do it on a and listen to it like it was Spotify, and I don't have to deal with the red tape of the corporate nightmare.
Yeah. And everybody has YouTube. That's how kids listen to music. Just pop on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know what the kids are doing these days.
You do though, because you have an insight in, well, let's talk about but you do have the insight. You go what a Vegas DJ does. You don't know exactly, but you see it because I'm in it and you see it. You know you're way more in tune than most.
Well, so let's talk about the book. I mean, what are your highlights, and what do you think?
Well, to me, it's it makes me think. I mean, I walked into band practice the other night and started the band practice with Ginger or Mary Ann. Like I didn't realize what a big part small things growing up of 70s TV and Gilligan's Island. And I started thinking about who crashed the boat, who really
Mhm.
messed that up. And
Well, that story morphs into other parts
yeah,
of
yeah,
living in the valley and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, when you're a kid and you're stoned watching TV in the afternoon, your parents are at work, and you're just sitting there, and you start to overanalyze the Ghost of Mrs. Muir, and you're just sitting there. Now, wait a minute. If I was a horny sea captain ghost and I had a hot MILF living in this deserted cottage, I'd be Mr. Incubus every single night. You know what I mean? And because that makes sense to me as a horny kid. And same with I Dream of Jeannie or Gilligan's Island, or of course Brady Bunch. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
be on
The
Marcia in a
Marcia part,
heartbeat.
the mall. Yeah, it's just, yeah. And that's even the mall, like knowing that I mean, I grew up in Jersey. I'm like, wow, you were having a semi-similar existence. We didn't grow up with like the guy from Fantasy Island at the family softball game, but you were going through these things. And what the book makes me realize is how the rock god, which I definitely think you are, all those pieces in the mall and those TV shows and waiting for that all added up to it.
Well, I don't know. I guess it's just observational. It's kind of like you know, for some reason I can tap into teenage living and remember it and think, what an amazing time it was and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And just the freedom of being able to just, this is before cell phones. This is before any of this Skynet internet 5G shit that we're dealing with right
Yeah,
now. I
yeah.
mean, you were just free to do anything. You could
You
just,
describe a day, and it gave me chills. I wanted to cry because you didn't know it wouldn't get. I mean, life is great, but not, I mean, it's good, it's bad. But that day where you go to the beach body surf, and that's just a day. Wait, what do you say? If you had a Dr. Pepper, a joint, and a stereo, dude, I got chills down my. That was really it. And you thought rock stars knew more than you, but you're like, no, they didn't.
well, I mean, think about it. That was the measure of your life. If you had a large, big gulp Dr. Pepper and a bag of weed, I mean, you were king.
And a boombox. Don't forget the boom. Was that
Yeah, but I
Aerosmith?
mean,
Like, oh,
you were king. If you had your music, weed, and caffeine from the soda, I mean, you were king, and that's all you needed. And you would just listen to music and groove, and just it energized you. I mean, because as a young kid, we forget now that we're grown up how music energized you and filled you and fulfilled you. Sometimes I watch YouTube videos of band like old Queen videos, and it takes me back to when I would listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, that Queen record, and be transported, and for that 40 minutes or whatever, I was in like Lord of the Rings land.
yeah.
I was in transported, and it was amazing, and that's how a music could fill you and affect you. And now that we're grown up, obviously we appreciate music, but we don't appreciate it like we did when we were kids, obviously.
Yeah. And you tap into that, but you said that writing the book could make you feel young. Reading it made me feel young, and it does bring me joy. It's just like we had different existences. Wow, these little things were so important, man. And it's the Spencers. I go, wait, I did go into I forgot. Going to
Mhm.
Spencer's, the black lights, the forbidden section, and Spencer's was a part of my rock existence. That's why I bought the Ozzy Black Light poster. I saw it at Spencer's. I got a black light down there. Like this, I spent way too much money on, but I didn't realize till you said that meant Spencer's to me with the
Yeah.
posters. Like, what is
Well,
that?
go and I'm going to the mall and hanging out, and the fumblings with the women, and just amateur making out in the what I mean, in the clubhouse, and all that rites of passage as a young boy. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff in the book, I think this book, I don't want to, it's not as angry. And I say that coming from the guy who was desperate and freaked out. Like my first book, I mean, I had lost my record deal. My band had broken up. I was living in this horrible building surrounded by cockroaches and rats, and I had nothing. And coming from someone who had nothing, who got the golden ticket and lost it, And so I was scribbling shit like a last will and testimony.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so obviously years later, I'm not in the same place, but it's a good story is a good story. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, it's like a
If I,
first, yeah, that was like a first album, which there was energy and pus and vinegar on it, but this seems so in tune by talking with you where I'm at, it seems so in tune with as I got it with time and it feels so
well,
much.
enjoying the past, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Writing about the past with fondness and not, you know, screw you, I got screwed, I'm a victim, yada, yada, yada. It's more of, wasn't it like some of the childhood stuff I talk about with the drugs and stuff like that? I mean, at the time it was terrifying, but now it's good fun.
Yeah. And what I also like is it's not all the past. Like there's one chapter where dude, it's such good writing where you're in your place and you see the old woman story. You can tell as much of it as you want. That's like great writing. Like what happens in
Yeah.
that blew my mind. And it was a nice relief because you know some people live in the past, truly just live in
Mhm.
the past. This book, you're in the past and you're in the present, but it still felt like it remind me of walking in Los Feliz 2 years ago when I was going to Los.
Yeah, that story. There's others like it.
It's a balance. It freshes it. There's a great pace to this.
Like the Quentin Tarantino story.
Oh, and we all I went on find Pulp Fiction. I realized it's not on Netflix. I wanted to watch it right after that. It's one of those books that makes you want to rewatch, grab
Yeah,
things.
good fiction. I mean, obviously, sort of half and half reminiscences, Sunset Strip stuff, and then just the hardcore fiction,
It's
like
great. The
The
fiction's
Aztec
great, dude.
dudes. You know,
Yes, dude, that Pulp Fiction going back, it was mind blowing. Different
well,
character every night.
in that last story, Curse of the '80s.
Oh my god,
How I mean, how funny is that?
that was incredible. That was incredible. Wait, now that's you're back at the Rainbow. Okay, yes. Oh, and you become the guy again. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Wow, just
Without giving it away. Yeah, it's
oh, it's just the perfect album ender.
yeah. It's funny. I mean, it's there's some funny stuff. There's some original writing in it. And when I look back, like my dog story, there's some
Yeah.
funny stuff in there. You know, I
Oh
mean,
yeah, the dog and the CBD. Yeah. It's just people got to get it. We're gonna put links to this and they can get it overseas, right? We have someone that wants to get it overseas.
yeah. You know what? I've already sold almost half of them already, and people are now. I've mailed them out, but people are starting to get them now, and so they're starting to trip out a little bit. So by the time this comes out, um, people will have gotten their book and will be able to enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, it's so enjoyable. And then and you said the YouTube. I have to delve in more and we're gonna get everybody to go in, but that's a new endeavor too, just to bring you
Well,
into your universe. That's what I love is you're
yeah. You
creating
know
a
what?
universe.
It's first off, it's a way for me to get all that music up there. You know, if people want to listen to it, and I know people with jobs are just kicking back and they just want to hear the Blackout in the Red Room record or Let's Rumble or any of my records. They can just listen to it. You know what I mean? And it's easy. And then the stories, like my Hollywood sign story, I I always, you know what I mean? It's a good story and I want to tell it and I'm learning how to tell it in the visual medium of YouTube and all the rules and regulations of YouTube and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You got to
yeah.
bleep out all the stuff. And yeah, and I mean that's kind of my new thing. I mean, I wrote this book. I got a new record coming out in a couple of weeks, my new record, and touring and whatnot. And I'm just going to focus on doing the YouTube and kind of developing an audience on the in the visual side.
Well, we're all fanatical about you in that it's nice to have a universe to come to for some. We all of a sudden, everybody has different Jizzy songs, old songs, new songs, but lately everybody wants to hear "Don't Fuck with Me" and like
Mhm.
how ahead of its time is this? That there's just the songs tell a story, the books tell a story. what I like is you're an artist. I feel like I grow old with, and I don't feel like a dick growing old with. There's some bands you're like, I don't know, you don't really can't take the journey with. I feel like we're taking the journey with you.
Well, you know, 2020 sucked and 2021 was so. And I'm hoping for 2022 that now Quiet Riot has Rudy Sarzo back, as you know.
Yes.
And people really want to see Rudy playing those songs. I want to see Rudy playing those
Oh
songs.
yeah.
I sometimes stare while he plays those songs because it becomes he's that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
you
dude,
see
I brought
some,
my
like you
bass
see,
teacher. I brought my bass in upside down. He's like, what? I was like, kid, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, no, this
yeah,
guy plays upside
like you
down.
see some guys now 20, 30, 40 years later, and they're just like the guys in Deep Purple. You're not seeing Ian Gillan
Yeah.
the way you saw him, in 1970, whatever. But Rudy looks remarkably the same. He's totally ageless. And when people come to see Quiet Riot, they're going to get that Rudy that they remember from those videos. I mean, he looks, it's,
Oh, I know,
it's,
Adam. Yeah. I mean, both
it's,
of you, what's interesting is you're in a band together. Neither of you are rock dummies. I have a thing, a BRD, a big rock dummy.
mhm.
Neither of you are even in this. Rudy's a big, large, smart guy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's
And, it's funny because we've
spiritual.
talked about our relationship from the Sunset Strip. I mean, how he was a couple of years before me, but he did the same thing. I mean, him and Frankie stole food from the Rainbow tables and were broke and slept on floors and by no means had a silver spoon in their mouth. And then boom, he's playing with Ozzy and
Yeah.
Randy, and so he's got 101 stories too, just like I do. And so, but we have that thread of having come up from the Sunset Strip and graduated and have that connection.
Yeah. Wow. Do you think you would ever do TV with this? This book just feels like such like it could be a TV series. You talked about
Well,
movies. You ever,
originally, as I told you, um, my Angst for the Memory book was slated to be a movie. Uh, we had a contract, and I mean, a small movie, not
yeah,
a big budget, but a real movie. And it was going to be on IFC. And the deal fell through basically because the company I worked for, um, IFC is a small thing. And so they would do a lot of non-union combat, filming stuff when you're not supposed to, not get the permits.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, because shit costs a lot of money.
yeah.
And the company I was affiliated with, um, I mean, they made Pulp Fiction. I mean, it was a real company. They couldn't do it. They just said we can't do that. We could get in a lot of trouble, and so the deal kind of fell through. That was 2005 when that deal fell through. But originally, this was going to be a movie or a TV show. I mean, people have come to me.
This just seems, yeah, this
Yeah,
seems,
people have come to me over the years with ideas about stuff like that, but most of the time it's bullshit. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Most of the time it's just talk. I've
Um,
I've
What's
gotten,
that like? What's that like?
I mean,
Exactly.
everybody, they
It's
pitch
our
you on
youth. Yeah, you don't believe anything, man.
well, it's not that I don't believe anything. It's just that it's hard to believe everything.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Most
That's a good
people,
way. Yeah,
they
yeah,
they
yeah,
give you these stories about what they're going to do and stuff like that, and it's just, you know, I have been down that road before. You know what I mean? You're going to be the next blah blah blah. You're going to be the next blah blah blah. And so generally, when it's time for the money to appear, that's when things sort of
right.
peter out. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, not to say that it couldn't happen.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of good, Twilight Zoney, Black Mirror stories
Yeah.
in all these books. But yeah, it would take someone with a little bit of courage and a good production company. But You never know. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm open to shit like that. Here's a funny story. There was a guy that was affiliated with my first book. He actually was a guy that kind of urged me to write my first book, because I was hesitant because I'm thinking, well, I'm not a real writer. And then he convinced me to sort of just do it. And
Right.
it became the Crickets book, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For better or worse, it was what it was. And this guy was affiliated with another writer, and I don't know the guy's name. I forgot his name, but he was kind of in this club of Bret Easton Ellis, American
Oh yeah.
Psycho,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and he was kind of one of those guys. And I won't say the name of his book because I don't want to embarrass him, but he was touted to be the next big thing, and Val Kilmer was going to be in his movie, and they were having meetings and stuff like this. It was very, very close to this guy just exploding because he was broke. He was a waiter. You know what I mean? He had no money. And how he screwed up was he sold the rights to this book to some guy for $1,500
Oh.
because he needed the effing money. And this guy screwed up the rest of his life because they tried to buy the rights from this guy, and he wanted millions. He wanted, every time someone would come and ask for the rights to do this book, this guy would screw it up. I want $5 million. I want 40%. I want
Oh.
just, and this guy, this writer, this really good writer, ended up bussing tables. And I don't know if he's even alive right now because that's that shit that can happen. You know what I mean? And it's a goddamn shame.
Speaking of
True
that,
story.
I gotta find out who the book is because I know I love it. Like,
I'll tell you off camera.
yeah, dude, how good was Less Than Zero? Those were the books. Less Than Zero, Every Rules of Attraction. Brad Easton Ellis, like you, he goes there, man.
He's kind of in more, he's an intellectual. He was more like Burroughs. You try and read Naked Lunch, it's like a textbook. I mean,
Right.
it's really hard reading. That's why I gravitated towards Bukowski, because he he was a poet, but he was a street poet, and it
Yeah.
was easy to read. His stories were easy, you know what I mean, and relatable.
It's funny because I taught one of my best friends, Jeff. He said, but he also taught literature at UCLA, and he said, Bukowski's like the Ramones. He's a good way in, you know what I mean? And then you go off,
Mm-hmm.
you splinter off from that, but that can really get you in the world. He's almost like the Ramones of good literature,
Yeah. No,
you
he's
know?
he's great. He's totally great. But yeah, I mean, talk about a sad story, that guy. I mean, I'll tell you off camera, and you can go look him up.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a nightmare. What a nightmare.
I mean, you can't, I mean, I just got for the Blackboard Jungle, someone said, we'll give you 10 grand for the publishing. We don't need it. It's not worth it for, you know what I mean? For now,
Hmm.
I'm like, nah, we're good. We're good. Then the next
Well,
day, someone,
split 4 or 5 ways, right? Of
yeah, and then
course.
someone called me about doing a documentary. Once again, will any of this happen? And I said, that first question is, do you own all your music? Yes.
Hmm.
Dude,
Yeah, don't ever sell. I mean, that's the thing is if you have stuff like I do, like books and stuff like that, um, don't sell yourself short, because you never know. I mean, yeah, I mean, I could get approached for something for the rights to this book, and you never know. You never know, and it's just, it's funny these days. Everybody gets everything for free.
yeah,
Um, Cody boxes. Everyone is used to getting their movies for free, their music for free. I mean, not the fans will buy your stuff, but I'm talking about the general
yeah.
public. and and some people get a hard on about, why is your shipping so much going overseas and stuff like that, like it's like I'm the post office. And
Yeah.
I'm just going, dude, that's the US post office. I mean, well, it costs more to ship the book than the actual book itself. Well, go talk to Biden. I mean, what do you want me to do about it? I just feel like people bitch about, they want new music and they want new product, and then when you do stuff, they got to still bitch. You know what I mean? Why are you
I
bitching
think
to
when they
me
don't
about it?
have one of your books and realize, because we've gotten so many shitty things in our lives from someone you thought was going to be good, but when I got my first one, that's why I mean,
Mhm.
$33, no problem. I told my friend in England, Vix, I'm getting you one. And she, oh, the shit. When you get it, you'll realize why, because you don't feel like an asshole when there's this much heart. And it can even lead to this, dude. The cover painting alone or drawing, can you talk to us? Who does this? This is incredible.
Um, yeah,
There's a
it's
lot there. It's as
obviously
much as any love hate album.
it's kind of Sergeant Peppery,
Yeah.
like Her Majesty's Satanic Request, more actually. Well, it's a representation of a tarot card, obviously,
Okay.
and the devil card in tarot, and this comes from my wife who knows about all this stuff. It the devil card is your addictions and your vices and what you're chained to in life. You know what I mean? So if you look at the cover, I'm
Sporting
chained.
contract. Is it? Yeah.
I'm chained to being Jizzo, whether I like it or not.
Love it.
And um, and the bottom stuff on the bottom are
Yeah.
all the vices. There's the drugs,
They got to
and
buy it
there's
to see. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
weed, and then there's
Even
the
the
old,
guitar.
and then the skulls are my old girlfriends.
Oh my God. Dude,
like past relationships, and so the booze bottles. You know what I mean?
oh,
The-
I do.
It,
Dude, I was staring like, is this as deep as I
it's
think it is?
all
I'm glad that it is.
it's all representative of your vices and what changed you or chained you in life and stuff like that, and how you know I am always going to be Jizzo. Even when I'm 75 years old, I'm still going to be Jizzo. And it is what it is. And so that's kind of where the cover came from. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like a uh, the come to Jesus moment of Yar what Yar,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and just be it.
dude, I'm sick of being Brits. I wanted to be Nikki Six. Billy's such a better name for me, but I stuck with it. I'm not gonna reverse again. Yeah, it's like Brits. Like I get it.
And
It's who you become. Now, question: you're talking about your wife. This is how do you feel writing and having her read this stuff? Because there's a lot there, and you're
oh,
obviously
it's
madly in love with her. Like, how is
well,
it to write and do this? Does she read them?
she um well, obviously you don't want to embarrass anybody.
No, 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 no. And you're
You know what I
respectful,
mean?
but
I don't, these books, and I've had in past relationships or with people, these books have always stood up, how should I say, girls always assumed these books were some sort of shag tell all, like a Gene Simmons thing where
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
basically am boasting chapter after chapter after chapter, 2,000 women, 6,000 women, like some Wikipedia screwathon. And it isn't like that at all. But it's also, I don't shy away from certain
No,
things, you know what I mean? Because it's part of the whole experience. And sometimes stuff makes for good stories and stuff like that. But as far as my wife and stuff like that, it's she can read it and recognize, the guy that used to be that guy,
yeah,
as opposed to the guy that is the guy now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
The guy that's married, the guy that goes on the road and does his gig and goes to bed every night, and you know what I mean? And isn't the crazy Caligula
But even
character.
along the way, the pieces are who you are. You're different even as a young kid than the average rock dummy.
And and to her credit, she's not she, you know what I mean? She's comfortable in her own skin as well.
Yeah,
Like when I talk about that story about the beauty apps,
yeah, yeah.
you know
Oh
what I
yeah. Oh
mean?
my God. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
like that's a full Twilight Zone episode in
Oh yeah,
itself.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing.
Um, but she's not that kind of person. She's, if you were to go to her Facebook or something, you wouldn't see 10,000 duckbill poses
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah.
and duck lips and all that stuff. But a lot of women, it's almost like it's an obsession. You know what I mean? And the beauty apps that make them like, it shimmers their face and makes them look like Pinocchio,
Yeah.
like puppets. You know what I mean? And I don't get it myself. I guess they just want to look better, and I guess that's okay. You know what I mean? But obviously, in my story, I take it to the absurd
Oh, it's
as
amazing,
usual.
man. So a lot of the anchors, so it's from old to young to old, you go back to TV to relax. I want to know what you're watching now. What's something Jizzy likes now? What are you watching on?
I like well, everyone has Netflix and everyone has the Cody, I'm sure. I watch right now I'm watching that show Succession on
The
HBO.
best show ever made, and you fuck off, dude. And the podcast that goes along, my favorite show. I love that you said that.
Succession's great. I just finished watching all of Yellowstone. That was great.
Oh, masterpiece. I'm watching
And
1883, the predecessing to Yellowstone.
I was coming home from a QR gig, and I was sitting next to some cowboy, obviously. I mean, he looked like he came right out of the
Yeah, yeah,
Yellowstone Ranch. And him and I had nothing in common. You know what I mean? I look like I do. And
yeah. Yeah.
he's reading a book, and it's a Christian book, and it's all about God and stuff. So I'm thinking this guy probably hates me. And he's looking for the three sixes on my head.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, he gets on his little phone and he starts watching Yellowstone. And I just look at him and I go, dude, that's my favorite show right now. And we strike up this conversation. We're shaking hands. We're exchanging numbers. He's like, what's your wife's favorite character? And I go, I think it's Rip.
Rip is
Or,
such a perfect character, dude. Oh my.
mhm. You know what I mean? So in answer to your question, I mean, Yellowstone, we're watching Succession right now, which is great. Billions is great. Um, Walking Dead has become really lousy.
I don't watch the zombie
Uh,
ones. I
and
like real, yeah.
yeah,
So
but I mean, Walking Dead was really good.
okay.
And I think the writing is just not, it's kind of like certain authors
Yeah,
that I really, really like have become not as good because they're rich, because
yeah.
they've written all these books and they don't have the fire anymore. And so, Billions, Walking Dead is not great. I'm a big Bill Burr fan,
Oh
so
God,
I,
yeah.
I
Love
watch all
so
of
F
his
is for
stuff.
family and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
He's a big
I mean,
rocker.
I watch a lot of the YouTube. I watch the goofy First Amendment frauditor nonsense.
Okay.
I watch the sovereign citizen nonsense when they break the guy's windows to get in the car.
Okay,
You
I'll
haven't
have to
seen
watch
any of
that.
that stuff?
No, I haven't. I'll
Oh,
check it out.
Google sovereign citizen on YouTube,
Okay, I
and it's
will.
these guys that don't think that they need a driver's license. They think they're. It's I won't. It's funny
Okay, I'll
because
totally
they
watch it
just.
because everything you said, beside The Walking Dead, I'm dead on my favorite shows.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I like watching intellectual. Like Succession is great because the writing is so good, because it's not written for 10-year-olds. You
No,
know what I mean?
no.
It's the jokes that are being said, like in Billions, it's the same thing. They're really intellectual stuff, and I dig that. I don't like
Oh
to
yeah.
be. If I want to watch cartoons, I'll watch Nickelodeon. But if you know what I mean. So that's we're in it right now. We're in second season of Succession, and
I think
digging
Succession
it.
is the best show. I like it better than Breaking Bad. And I've been listening to the podcast to compare, and they talk about even Kieran Culkin's character, how he didn't even find it till season two, and just
Mm-hmm.
how amazing how much is underneath each of those characters
Well,
isn't.
and how um, how weird the really rich are, how detached from reality that they are, that they live in a completely different world than you or I. You know what I mean? They don't
Oh
even
yeah.
they don't even have the same. They're not even the same species. They just. That's what I dig about it, because they're just so clueless in some ways. It's
I'll
awesome.
say I work on a boat, and we have a lot of the .com guy parties come on,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of like Kendall. And my boss watches Succession. You'll get to a part, this isn't giving anything away, but Kendall throws a party and he goes, why isn't the DJ playing bangers all right now? Call Bruce Springsteen. He wants it to go off right away, which is how, and I had to show my boss, go, that scene is what I live in, that they want it to go off before the pasta water boils. And I literally have Kendall's playlist because he put his playlist out and it's exactly what Kendall would have played. And it works every time for a little bit of White Lines, little silly, little Vegas. What are they playing? And it's what a great show, man. That makes me so happy that you love those shows, man. Because it's a thread.
I'm really glad that you dig the book. I mean, I knew you would because you're a reader, and people that read and appreciate writing, I think will dig it. You know what I mean? And if because it's important to me, you know what I mean, that I don't put out schlock.
Oh, it's so good, Jiz. This is just so good. This is like I said, it's one of the few books I don't loan and let people have. Not just because it's autographed, but usually, you get a book, you finish it. Oh, you can keep that. I've done it. This needs to come back with my series of books. It's one of my, something that I really love. It's funny. The only books I won't let go from this year that I bought are yours. And I know you're going to laugh, but Jim Carrey's book was amazing. It was one of the better books I've read. It had nothing to do with the bio. It was fictitious about the end of Hollywood burning, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it exists now. I even open it up and leaf through it, and I appreciate. It's kind of like when you give birth to a kid. Not that I have, but I'm paraphrasing. But if I gave birth to a kid and the kid was walking around and all of a sudden the kid was talking and I just go, oh my God, this kid's got a brain, and I created that kid, and you know what I mean? That's the feeling I get when you, and obviously, you know what I mean? Because the book just came out. It's only been out 2 weeks. So I get to still have that childlike
Oh God, yeah.
love for the stories, you know what I mean, and appreciate them in a different way. And again, I hope that people, they know they're not going to get Tommy Land or The Dirt or something like that. Those books are all great books for what they are, but they're not. They're just, you know what I mean. They're sensationalized. You know what I mean.
Sometimes you want McDonald's. Sometimes you want a little bit more a nice Mexican.
Well, if you're interested in real writing and a guy that's doing that, then this is something that you'll dig. You know what I mean? And
well, you're writing these. You're not talking them into your Siri and having an editor find. That's what those books.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a big difference.
without saying it, that's what all these books are. But it's just, I mean, to me, that's just, it's all Wikipedia. You know what I mean? It's just like songs and stories. Well, what's your song Blackout in the Red Room about? Blah, blah, blah. Well, when you have a song about blacking out, drinking, it's sort of hard to couch it in PC terms. I mean, if you break that song apart, it's a very dark song. It's blacking out. It's I'm so effed up.
Now we know why I picked
that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And no wonder we weren't sold in Kmart, at the time. We had that sticker because it's ha ha ha, but it's also not ha ha.
Totally, some darkness. And final question, I almost forgot to ask you, would you ever do like Duff did and do a musical thing with your books? And I don't mean songs. I mean, where you speak and there's music behind you or anything like that. Would you ever?
You mean like an audio or a live thing?
I mean, obviously audio would be amazing and you'll just decide whether to do, but some authors do the thing with like band and music behind them where they do the spoken word thing. Like, I'd love to see you read this book.
Yeah. I mean, I know what you're talking about with the
like Duff I don't know thing. How you present it with visuals with like, would it ever be something you would present in a different, just I would love.
I mean, I always
see authors at Book Soup, like just talk their books, read their books, and there's presentation.
I guess I always underestimate, and I just sort of I try and gauge what the public will do. I like back in the day, I was asked to do some book signings and stuff at bookstores, and I always bowed out because I was scared of the Artie Fufkin, you know, like the Spinal Tap thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, what
yeah. I
if you
get what you're
gave a
saying.
signing and nobody came? You know, it's always in the back of my mind of are people gonna do, like, I did songs and stories overseas and where I'm still sort of popular in the UK, and they went off really well. I played acoustically, and I told stuff, you know, like
Yeah, yeah.
stories of back in the day and stuff, and they went over really well. And I might do a couple here for fun, but you know, it's Bruce Dickinson is way more famous, so he can do these kind of things on a tour. You know, for me, I just need to build up my mojo a little bit more, I think, before I'm willing to to do that. But
I saw
you know,
Bruce Dickinson on that thing, and you crush him. You would crush him. He's like a hobbit out there. I know he's great. I bought the book, but there's no comparison.
well, he's different than I am. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not doing what I'm doing. He's, you know what I mean?
I'm
What I
sorry, and I'll say Bruce is jacking off to Bruce. You are telling a story. I
Well,
know everybody.
that's an interesting way of putting it. I'm a storyteller. I
Yeah,
tell stories. Sometimes they're true stories, sometimes they're made up stories, but that's the difference. I'm not out there to like Bill Burr has an interesting thing he talks about it. How, I mean, think of how much work it takes for him to craft an hour
oh yeah,
worth of
yeah,
material. I do my little podcast, and 10 minutes is hard for me. You know what I mean? Of pacing and timing and jokes and yada yada. And he's saying how he gets the germ of a joke, and then he goes to comedy clubs and he refines them and he makes them better, and he sees what works and what doesn't, and he builds. It's like garage band, you know what I mean?
yeah,
He's
yeah,
building stuff and fleshing it out, and it becomes, you know, you don't see any of that stuff.
yeah.
Nobody does. You know what I mean? But you see it on Netflix on his specials, and it's brilliant, and he's amazing. But he'll tell you, you don't know how much work went into that. You're seeing you're seeing the Cadillac. You're not
Yeah.
seeing the Ford Pinto.
Oh, I know one of his best friends, and they say they go out to the movies, and everybody's going home, and he's like, "I'm going to the club." They
Mhm.
can't believe he just every gonna go do a set because I got to make the guy in the lunchroom the same guy that's on stage. The guy who's in the
He's the
lunchroom.
best. That guy is the best, and I hail him. He's so good.
Well, thank you so much, Jizzy. And we're gonna put links to your YouTube channel and the book in the chat, and everybody's gonna get one, and everybody's gonna subscribe.
So you want to? I'll speak to you off air.
All right,
So
yeah.
you,
Say goodbye to
uh,
everybody.